we're lining up against just savages in the sprints league. Like, I see these guys, they're studs. Like, everyone in our league, if you're a lightweight rower in the sprints league, like, I know what you're about, especially at the varsity 8 level. Like, these guys are just killers. Like, you gotta, like, everyone's going to be good on the erg, everyone's going to be rowing really well. Like, where's your X factor? To me, it's about the team. And like and it starts in high school, like getting kids who want to be in this, who are like dying to be a part of your group, whether that's Dartmouth or Cornell or Harvard, right? Like, it's got to be that kind of X factor, that love of it, that passion for the sport, for the training, for the school, for the coaches. Like, you get a group of guys like that, like the coaching staff, me, we'll take care of everything else. We'll get you better.
You ready, Rock? Cool. Let's do it. So for everyone listening, I have Trevor Michelson here, Dartmouth lightweight head coach, and I'm really excited to talk to Trevor here because I know Trevor from just working up in Hanover a couple summers at the Evergreen camp up that way. I love Hanover. I love Dartmouth, and Trevor is someone that I'm incredibly excited to talk to because I think we actually literally had almost a mini podcast right before we even logged on here. Or right before we even started recording, like just some of the topics that he wanted to share, some of the topics and questions that I'm interested in asking, because Trevor brings a wealth of information, and a lot of this conversation is going to tie to lightweight rowing, especially on the men's side, but also I think a lot of it is going to be applicable to anyone who is going through the college recruiting process as they go to find the right fit for them. What is the right fit in terms of colleges, in terms of location, but also in terms of, okay, like, where are you looking in terms of the recruiting process? Are these viable options that best suit you? And Trevor's going to be able to answer some of those questions. But Trevor, I'm going to let you kind of quickly or introduce yourself. I got 3 questions for you right off the bat. Number 1, I want you to dive into why you're wearing that Yankees hat. I think I already know why. And I think is that evergreen green? Is that like a Dartmouth green? Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Actually, I bought this for myself when the Yankees made it to the World Series. I like wearing a Yankees hat around. It's blue, Dartmouth green. I found this online. I thought it was really fitting. I grew up in New York, learned to row in New York in high school. My family's still in New York, but I'm a big go green, so this is the perfect blend for me.
Yeah. I love it. And I think probably when this comes out, we'll be a game or two into the World Series and all that. So hopefully, I'm not a baseball fan, but I'll be definitely watching because it sounds like a historical series that's coming up. But anyway, with that, Trevor, we already kind of alluded to it. Kick things off for us. Talk a little bit about what's in store, what's going on up in Hanover, up at Dartmouth. You just came off of an incredibly tight race up in Boston at the head of the Charles. Like, that's part of the fun that we're going to have today, talking about the competitiveness that is lightweight rowing on the men's side and these tight margins and even in a head race on the biggest stage. So before we get to that, introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your background, and then also tell us a little bit about where you guys are in the season. Maybe talk a little bit about your experience up in Boston, and then beyond that, like what's coming down the pipe here as we enter second half of fall.
Sure. So yeah, Trevor Michelson. This is my 3rd or 4th year as the head coach of the lightweight men at Dartmouth. I was the assistant coach for 4 years before that. I coached at my alma mater, Wesleyan University, and rowed there as well. Spent a year coaching the freshman men at Fordham. Before that, learned to row in high school at the New York AC, New York Rowing Association, excuse me. Spent a lot of summers rowing at the New York AC, and then just, been coaching at a lot of different levels. Spent a lot of time coaching in the summers at Vesper, recently with the under 23 sweep team. Been really fortunate to be a part of the staff the past 2 summers. This year we won the Cox 4 and we're second in the 8, and the year before second in the 8 and third in the Cox 4, and just got to work with some really great coaches, John Graves, Sergio Espinoza. I feel like I've really developed as a coach because of so many great mentors I've had. Dan Rook, who was my longtime boss at Dartmouth, Wyatt Allen, who's our heavyweight head coach, Phil Carney, my college coach, Norm Graff, my associate head coach in college. And just through all that, once I kind of got the reins at Dartmouth, kind of had an idea of what I thought was going to be really crucial to our development, which was really going to be a holistic approach of developing individual athletes. So at Dartmouth, we're a small school. We're a small team, that kind of replicates that small in the woods liberal arts education style microcosm at the boathouse. So we try to really develop guys, and that happens on the water mostly by spending a lot of time in singles. We have 20 singles as a team. We pretty much send every guy out in singles every day in the fall. We do that to develop their boat feel, to kind of rank guys. A big part of our Charles selection is actually our ranking in a single sculls race we do every week. And then also our body of water is incredible. As you know, Kevin, you can row pretty much forever. We only turn about one time a practice, which is pretty lucky. And so we run a real mileage-based training program. A lot of time spent monitoring our intensity of training, spending time just like building our aerobic capacity, kind of converting those muscle fibers to red ones. And it's been working out pretty well for us. So we started about 5 weeks ago. We had our first race. We were able to race our heavyweights, the Boston University heavyweights, and Wesleyan, who are the defending D3 national champions. Had a really good run over 2x3 miles at home before going to Boston 2 weeks ago. And we were able to put 2.8s in the lightweight 8 category for the first time in a while. But our second boat last year was kind of our highlight performance. Our varsity was 4th at the sprints and 5th at the IRA. Our JV, or our second 8, was 7th. They narrowly missed the final at the sprints, but they were able to come in 5th at the IRA. So I was really excited about those guys. Returned all but one of those athletes. So I thought, if there was ever a time to enter our second 8 into Boston at the head of the Charles, it would be this year. They did a really nice job actually taking out 2 crews, which I was really proud of. And our varsity was part of one of the tightest fields I've seen. So we were 5th, 1.4 seconds away from second. So second, Cornell, third, Penn, 4th, Princeton, 5th, Dartmouth, all within a second, less than a second and a half. And I think that just highlights the kind of defining core of lightweight rowing, right? Which is close, tight racing. Everyone's the same size. All the coaches in our league are fantastic. All the athletes train really hard. Margins are hard to come by. And I think 1.4 seconds over 3 miles extrapolates to what? 0.4 seconds over 2K. We're looking forward to a really tight spring racing season, and we're right back to training for it. We do have one more race next weekend. We'll welcome Harvard and Columbia lightweights up to Hanover to do a stake race and around the buoy, which is about 5K. We'll do a piece in small boats, singles, pairs, straight fours, doubles, quads in the morning, and then we'll race in the 8s in the afternoon. So excited for that, excited for the season. But mostly, I think on our team, we circle very few races on the calendar. When we sit down in September and meet with the team, the races we circle, they're all in May. We've got May 18th. That's the sprints. We know it's May 18th. We know the heat's at 11:02 or 11:10. We know we got to be top 3 to make the final. We know the finals at 4:30 or 4:35. We know we have to come top 7 to qualify for the IRA. And we know we have to be top 3 if we want to be on the podium. And so we kind of work backwards from there, trying to see, okay, we have different kind of benchmarks. The Charles is the first one. It's a great one. We see almost everyone in our league. We go, we race, we try our best to have the best performance on the day. We come back, okay, what have we done right? What can we do better? And we continue kind of checking our progress on the water, on the erg. We definitely kind of monitor our kind of progress on the erg pretty much every week and just try to steadily increase our progress. And I think for me, for my assistants, Nolan, Hannah, for our team, the name of the game is consistency. So how consistent can we be with our training? How consistent can we be with our recovery? What we're doing to our bodies outside of the boathouse, how we're handling ourselves in practice, and see if we can kind of string together a couple good days, a couple good weeks, turn that into months, turn that into semesters, and end up on the starting blocks at the sprints, feeling confident that we're able to perform our best.
Yeah, no, I love that. And a couple of things that I want to acknowledge first before we kind of start, diving into a little bit about lightweight rowing and the recruiting process, things like that. But you kind of already highlighted, right? You had a race up at was that race before the Charles? Was that in Hanover? Right.
Yeah.
And then you have the stake boat race after. And I just want to, before we even kick off, a lot of our conversation, like, I have experience up, at Dartmouth and, coaching on that river just through camp and stuff like that. Like, and I know a lot of athletes who have been up there visiting, like you guys, like it's such an awesome area to train, to be in this rowing environment. And when, I'm here in Philadelphia, that's where I coached, in my college career. It's a completely different world in Philly rowing versus what you can do up in Hanover, where you do have this playground that is, the river and the amount of miles that you have to be able to do stake boat racing, to be able to have these small, head race style regattas up there, like, and not to mention the campus itself and being in this, amazing, very green, very, rural, but awesome college town that is Dartmouth. So anyway, I want to put that plug in there because it is a really cool place to go, and spend some time for anyone that's been up there, right? And the fact that you guys have that playground to kind of be able to do some racing like that on your home field, on your home river, like that's got to be a blast for all the programs there.
I love the way you called it a playground. Like I totally agree with that, and not Dartmouth, Harvard, Columbia, Penn, Princeton, Yale, all these schools, Cornell, like we all have unique kind of quirks to our school, our boathouse, our body of water, and not everything, not what I do at Dartmouth isn't going to necessarily work at Cornell, right? And what we do at Cornell might not work at Dartmouth. But I think what's so exciting about college coaching is everyone's looking for their advantage and to make the most of it. And I have so much respect for all the coaches in our league and all the athletes they work with. I know most of the athletes from the recruiting process. I know all the coaches really well. And I think everyone takes what they see as their advantage and tries to really dive into it. And then what's their disadvantage and tries to minimize it. And so I think that we spend a lot of time at Dartmouth, and I would say not just me and my coaching staff, but along with our heavyweights and women, like, okay, what do we have? We have this incredible stretch of water. It's almost always flat. We can row forever. We have very few other kind of power boats or schools on our body. It allows us to row the single. It allows us to have racing, with big groups here, right? And then, our disadvantage, which is the winter, our body water freezes, it's cold, it's snowy. Okay, how can we turn that disadvantage into an advantage? For us, we try to spend some time cross-country skiing as good cross training to supplement our winter training. We kind of have a really powerful group of alums who recognize that we're indoors a lot. So in 2019, they revamped our indoor training facility, giving us an extra space to have a weight room at our boathouse, to have an extra erg room, to have moving water tanks. And so I think something that we've really honed in on, and I won't take credit myself, I think a lot of credit goes to Wyatt, who's kind of our longest standing coach here, to John, to all the women's coaches, all the lightweight coaches before us, that were like, okay, what do we need to maximize our kind of pocket of this league? And let's go ahead and dive in and make it the best we can.
Yeah, no, I love that. And like, again, like it's, obviously, yeah, you have the winter to deal with, but then how do you supplement that with cross country skiing or ways to kind of keep the team active? And, maybe it is, obviously there's a massive emphasis that's put into the erg and winter training, but there are ways to use where you are as an advantage in those times as well. So, Trevor, I think you alluded to it a lot, like, and this is what I'm really excited to talk about. Like, you mentioned even just in a couple of times, right? We talked about the tight margins at the head of the Charles this past weekend. You also talked about the fact that you know, obviously, the other coaches in the lightweight league. You've actually probably competed on the recruiting front with a lot of the athletes who are now in those boats that create those tight margins. Like, that's one of the things I really wanted to dive into, because I think one of the things that I experience with what I do, and, it's just been, something that always pops up, is lightweight rowing, the competitiveness in terms of just both the performances on the water, but also what you have in terms of the recruiting front, where you have, and we talked about this a little bit prior to hitting record, but you have these finite amount of schools that support varsity lightweight rowing. They also, for the most part, all happen to be top 1% academic programs, right? You're talking about the Ivy Leagues, you're talking about some of these other programs or schools that are very, very in, high demand, right? From on a recruiting front. And through that, probably, you have this pool of athletes, pretty much, I like to kind of joke, but like anyone between 150 and 170 is probably sending you an email at some point, right? Everyone's going to have those schools on their list. And that makes it very selective in the recruiting process. And then through that, it probably leads to these very competitive tight races. And I want to kick things off on that front. And I want you to kind of shed a little bit of light on lightweight rowing, the diving a little bit more into just the performances and the competitiveness of these programs, but also the discovery of athletes who can fill those seats. Unpack that for me. Give us a good summary in terms of just the lightweight league, the recruiting process through that, and let's kick things off with that.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this before with you, but I see when I kind of break down, and I've done a little, I've recruited a little bit on the women's side. I've watched our heavyweights do a really nice job recruiting. I've obviously spent a lot of time recruiting on the lightweight side, and the way I see it in women's rowing, there are, it's not just the Ivy League. There are, I'm thinking Michigan, UVA, Stanford, Cal, like all these highly selective, incredible academic institutions, right? Where, kids, bright students, good athletes can have this great experience and they want to go. There's a ton more spots in women's rowing. And maybe even, seeing how international is, there's probably more spots for women's rowing than there are kind of top tier academic athletic athletes in the United States. On the men's side, I think there's a little closer of a balance between the available spots and the number of really high quality athletes, right? In lightweight rowing, there's only like 50 or 60 spots in college any year for these athletes. And as you know, as I know, there are a lot more than 50 or 60 really smart, bright, fantastic student athletes in that kind of 160-pound range. So it's an incredibly competitive process. And what the second side to that is recruiting. I always say this: recruiting is picking your Christmas tree in July. We're not too concerned how good a kid is when they're 17 or 16. We're looking for the kids who are going to be varsity contributors when they're 20, 21, 22, right? And no one has the magic crystal ball to see. And so really what you're trying to do as a recruiter is you're trying to bring in kids that you think are really talented, but more importantly, that you can develop in your system. And, as I've been doing this for 10 years or so, the number one way that I've seen kids be successful for 4 years in college is kids that have a deep passion for the sport, just absolutely love it. It's their life. they couldn't imagine their world without rowing, because rowing's hard and lightweight rowing's even harder. In college rowing, you're spending, 20 hours a week training, but, that's not including all the time you have to spend, uh, you know, at the dining hall, right? With your team, chopping it up. That's a huge part of college. You know, uh, uh, Meeting with a nutritionist, or, meeting with sports medicine, uh, team bonding activities, right? Hanging out with your team. I mean, these guys, walking to the boathouse, walking back. If you're adding all these hours up, I mean, you're talking about 30, could be 40 hours a week that you're dedicating to thinking or focusing on rowing. That's a full-time job, plus you have school, plus you have your internships, you have your social life. I mean, there's so much going on. If you don't absolutely love this thing, if this isn't like at the core of what you want to do, it's going to be really challenging to achieve it successfully through all the ups and downs. I mean, training, we love everyone's trajectory to be like this. I have yet to see it. We've gotten kids that are close, but my best guys, my top tier guys who have raced at the world championships, right, who have won Olympic trials, I'm thinking of all these guys, not a single one of them was like this. They had ups, they had downs. It's like the stock market. The trend on these good athletes is always high, but there's low points. And like, to stay committed and training and consistent and keep it going, I think there's a lot of factors that go into it that a coach and a team can play a role in, right? Motivation and team culture and all these things. But really, it's that deep down dark drive that I want to be good at this. I want to do this. I want to compete at the highest level. I want to be the best I can. Because at the end of the day, rowing's about the pursuit of excellence, right? We're out there every day trying to be as good as we possibly can, trying to be perfect, and we know we'll never get there. But we're constantly trying to kind of pursue that excellence. And through that, that's the beauty of it, right? Like, I talk about this all the time. And I've had some crews do some fantastic things. I think about this four I coached at the under 23s this summer that won the world championships. They won by 4 or 5 seconds. It was unbelievable. Just like a moment I'll never forget, right? Sitting in the boatyard, watching these guys win the world championships in the last ever year of the Cox Four. Iliad's the coxswain from Cal, Miles Hudgens at Dartmouth, Leo Bessler at Harvard, Braden Porterfield's a Northeastern kid, and then Josh Diggins, a Drexel kid. But when I think about the summer and what they got out of it, it wasn't that race. I think about being out on the river and we're working on trying to be able to hit like a really good 36, right? And we were watching a lot of this footage of the GB8 that just won the Olympics, and we were trying to like get their kind of rhythm in the boat. And like, I remember it just like clicked. Like, those are the moments I think about. I think about these like bikes we would have the guys do in the afternoons when they were totally smoked and they just like couldn't get back in the boat, and they're hanging out and they're biking and they're all excited because they know in like 3 weeks time, like, to me, like, those are the memories I'll take. And I know also like those are the memories those guys will take. And that's not the end goal. That's the pursuit. Right. And to want to do that every day, there's got to be a passion. And so when I'm talking to high school kids and they're asking me, they want to know, okay, what do I need? What ERG score? What GPA? What SAT? The brass tacks. I'm not really concerned with that. Like, it's great. There is an academic and athletic kind of level you have to hit to be a Division I rower, especially in the lightweight league, especially in the Ivy League. You got to be an all-star student. You got to be really fit. You got to be really strong. But like, that's not recruiting to me. I'm looking for kids that have a passion for the sport. I'm looking for kids that can check their ego at the door and really be a part of a team. They're tenacious in the way they race. They're diligent in the way they prepare and they train. Those are the aspects. And I look at this last recruiting class we had, and I won't use names, but they'll all know who I'm talking about. I give 630 as a benchmark, and I think every one of my peers does too. 630 is the lightweight benchmark, right? But I have recruited in this last class, I have a kid who went 616, way better than 630, and a kid that went 646, way worse, right? And the reason is because the erg is just one of these metrics. Jack Stone, and I use him all the time, I know he's embarrassed about it. Jack Stone came to us, fully recruited athlete, 649 on the erg. No one would say that's good. Cooper Tuckerman came to us, 638 on the erg. All right? Like, they were not the standouts of their recruiting class physically. They were great in the single. I think Cooper was like second or third at the Charles in the single as a little lightweight. Jack Stone, I think, was fourth or fifth in the single. These guys are graduates, was a few years out. But they came in. Jack Stone stroked our varsity for 4 years. Cooper Tuckerman just won Olympic trials, right? I think his PR is like, he's still not that good on the erg, but I think he went like 617 or something, right? Like, these guys, like, no one would recruit them if they were just looking at erg scores. And maybe that's why they ended up at Dartmouth. I don't know. I think if, other schools knew that Cooper Tuckerman was going to bow a boat that raced at Lucerne at the final Olympic qualification regatta, they probably wouldn't have wanted him. But that's a mainstay of our varsity 8, and we only got him because I could tell with both these guys. They had some good metrics. They had long arms. They were really skinny. They were tough. They loved rowing, obsessed with it. They loved Dartmouth, right? Which is really important. Like, people talk about college choices. To me, why I want someone who loves Dartmouth and wants to be at Dartmouth is because, Dartmouth's unique. We're unique amongst our peers. We're a small school. We're a small team. We're up in the woods, like, outdoorsy. So much of our team, like, bonding activities is hiking. They hike Moosalok. They go to cabins. Like, if you're not into that stuff, you're not going to be into our team. And we need like 100% bonding killers, right? Like, I always talk about, like, our tight knit group. It's got to be like band of brothers. Like, they got to be warriors. Like, we're lining up against just savages in the sprints league. Like, I see these guys, they're studs. Like, everyone in our league, if you're a lightweight rower in the sprints league, like, I know what you're about, especially at the varsity 8 level. Like, these guys are just killers. Like, you gotta, like, everyone's going to be good on the erg. Everyone's going to be rowing really well. Like, where's your X factor? To me, it's about the team. And like, and it starts in high school, like, getting kids who want to be in this, who are like dying to be a part of your group, whether that's Dartmouth or Cornell or Harvard, right? Like, it's got to be that kind of X factor, that love of it, that passion for the sport, for the training, for the school, for the coaches. Like, you get a group of guys like that, like, the coaching staff, me, we'll take care of everything else. We'll get you better on the erg. We'll get you better at rowing. But like, we can't teach drive. That's got to come from within.
All right, what's up, everyone? Kevin Leslie, and quick interruption to the podcast to tell you about the At the 1,000 Collective. The ATT Collective is an online community for high school rowers who want to better position themselves for long-term success at the college level. And in the collective, you're going to be invited to 2 group coaching Zooms per month, featuring top coaches, elite athletes, rowing experts, where we're going to dive into topics centered around training, rowing performance, college recruiting, personal development, you name it. You're also going to get an opportunity for a live Q&A where you can ask individual questions to help set you on your own path. You're also going to receive a weekly newsletter with erg workouts, core circuits, tips and tricks for rowing and recruiting, and also highlights from any previous Zooms so you can begin to incorporate those into your own practice. Lastly, you're going to get unlimited access to all ATT online courses and programs, most notably the erg First, Row Second online course, where you can begin to do some training at your own pace. So the purpose of this program is to help athletes get the information and guidance to help them take that next step and feel prepared heading into college rowing. So if you're interested in joining, we're offering 50% off your first month. Go to the description below, grab the code, and we hope to see you in the next Zoom. And you'll also receive your first newsletter as soon as this upcoming week. So again, join the community. Let's have some fun. Let's keep pushing and evolving our rowing. And I hope to see you soon. Now back to the show. Peace. I love that, and I mean, you obviously lead by example because of just the passion and drive that you have in articulating like what you're looking for, and I think that you can hear that through just that little 5 minute right whatever, right? Like you can hear like what you're looking for as a coach and the athletes that you're looking for, and the where a lot of it's tied to the intangibles, the characteristics of the athlete, the personality, the drive, the internal motivation that they have. And no, that's incredible. And obviously for those athletes who, are those, guys who maybe weren't the, top of the class in terms of where everyone's looking as a coach, to take the time to understand them, have them enter this environment where they can be successful, and then the sky's the limit. And that's a huge thing in rowing itself. There are countless examples of guys who didn't even start rowing until they got to college, right? Like, myself, and obviously, even to use someone in your own boathouse, Coach Wyatt, like, he was a walk-on at UVA and has, Olympic gold and success. Like, there's so many examples of that too. And to be able to identify the internal motivation early on, you're going to be able to find those diamonds in the rough that can really take off. And my follow-up to that is, okay, well, you outlined a couple of examples of athletes who you're able to bring into the program. They found success and they took it to massive heights. How do you, because I want to make it, I know it's not that easy in terms of identifying those athletes. And I want to hear from you, like, okay, well, how do you, and this is good for the kids at home who are thinking about this, how do you sift through that clutter? How do you and your staff sift through the volume of emails and phone calls and so on and so forth to be able to identify, is this athlete an appropriate fit? Do we see this investment as someone who can be a varsity A contributor down the line? And then also there is probably that tangible, the physical attributes aspect of that too. Take that and run with it, because I think that's something that a lot of athletes are going to ask themselves at home, right? Like, he says it's not about the ERG score, or again, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but he says it's not only about the ERG score,
yeah.
But a part of it is going to be, hey, like there has to be some filtering aspect of it. So unpack that for us.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. And I mean, it's hard. It's really hard, right? And I think, again, I think obviously the first step is always reaching out, right? And I think that, I'll use this as an example, right? There's all these recruiting softwares, and we get, you can fill out a recruiting questionnaire on our line, right? And sometimes even we'll go and we'll find a kid who hasn't found us, right? Like maybe there's a kid that's looking at, Brown or Drexel, right? And he never reached out to Dartmouth, and I'll find his name somewhere and he seems like a promising kid, and I'll reach out to him and we'll get into the recruiting process, right? When it really comes, and then, let's say I want him and Brown wants him and Drexel wants him, right? Is the kid going to choose Dartmouth over Brown and Drexel if those were the schools he was driven to first or drawn to? Maybe he didn't know Dartmouth and I was able to, could show him how great it is. But generally, if the kid didn't want us, it's going to be hard for us to win him. Does that make sense? Right? So like, I think the first step is like using what we know is like the kids who reach out to us are generally the kids that are going to want to come to Dartmouth. Right? And I don't think that's the right strategy for every school, but we happen to be a school that, people know about Dartmouth, people know in lightweight rowing, we're a school, we're a player. And so I think like the first thing is kind of seeing, okay, who's really interested in us? The next is, again, there's the number of kids who are between 5'10" and 6'1" are, 150 to 165 pounds. And as a junior in high school, go 650, I don't know, there could be 400. Wouldn't surprise me, right? And I was one of those kids, I was one of those kids. And, I went 6'48" or 9, and I was really skinny, and I loved rowing, right? And wasn't particularly skilled or slick, didn't row a lot of small boats, but just loved rowing, did from stroke one, right? And, trained, I wouldn't say we trained particularly hard in high school, but, we worked out, and, I had a blast. And, I think that I know, and I broke 620 in college, right? So it's like, you know, they're out there, right? And like, what are the qualities that you want, right? I talked about them. I'm looking for like gym rats, kids that love to train, right? I'm looking for kids that love the sport, they have a real passion for it, kids that don't have an ego, right? Kids that have some of the metrics, like the physical metrics, like a long humerus bone. That's generally a pretty good sign that you're going to be a good rower, right? You got long arms. A big chest cavity usually means you got big heart, big lungs. That's good for rowing. I think there's some of that when we can see kids, definitely attracted to that. And then, like, there's more to the erg score than the erg score. All right. So I'll use an example of a kid on my team, Gray Graham. We did this 30 rate 20, and he went 153.7, which is good, but not, bottom end of our team for sure. And, on that score, I think like breaking 8K is a pretty good start. That's like 152.5. Being under 150s, like you're starting to get pretty good. 145 is like what our very best guys would do, right? Like that's like really killer. And that's a hard test for lightweights, but it shows power. Anyway, this kid, generally on a 30 rate 20 where you don't have the rate to climb, you really want a negative split. So I usually tell guys, start a split or two above, work through 10 minutes, really sink your teeth into that middle 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go if you're feeling it, make the final step. Last 10 minutes, go, right? 5 minutes, go. Gray Graham, he's sitting in the back of our erg room. He's a freshman, watching the kid go. I thought, breaking 154 would be pretty good for the kid. He goes out, he's like 153.8. And I'm like, not going to be good for him. Like that's just not the way to approach this test. But 10 minutes in, 53.8, 15 minutes in, 53.8. He's just grinding, and I'm watching him. He's bleeding. He's like snot and blood's like coming from his nose. He's like red. He's hurting. He's going. He ends up 53.7. Right. So he just like even split that piece. And I'm watching this piece, and that's a tough kid. That's gritty. And maybe his fitness isn't where we want it to be. And maybe the fitness isn't where he wants it to be. And he's not psyched about the overall score. But I'm there, and I'm like, after the piece, I'm not highlighting our top kid who went like 40 whatever, or like how many kids broke 150. Like, I don't care about that. I'm highlighting this kid who's on the bottom end of the erg depth chart, but grinded. Right. And so I kind of think about that when I'm looking at these erg scores. Right. And I can't watch these kids test, but I can see their split breakdown. Like, are you a kid who went let's go 638, which I think still under 640. If you're under 155 pounds, I think breaking 640 is good. And I realize there's kids breaking 630 and some kids breaking 620, but I still think if you're breaking in the 630s, that's really good. That's a good score for a skinny high school kid, right? Who doesn't have their full, development, testosterone, all that stuff. Like, did you get there by going out at 141 for the first 1500 and then sprinting? Is that how you got to that 638? Did you get there by hammering 139s every stroke of that piece? Did you get there by going out at 125 and then like blowing up? Like that stuff kind of helps tell me or tell us what kind of kid we're dealing with, right? And sometimes even a test isn't so good, but a workout, like how are they approaching a 3x10 workout, right? How are they approaching 2 6Ks? And I think that I really encourage athletes not just to send me their erg score. I go this, and that, but like, give me some more details. Like, how'd you approach your piece? How do you approach your training? Right. And then within that erg score, what kind of program are you at? Are you at one of these powerhouse programs that erg tests all the time? And, and that takes a little bit of knowledge, right? Knowing the schools, but erg tests all the time, are surrounded by great athletes. The standard and you just can't hit it. Are you from a team where you're the best guy, right? Or you guys never erg, or you don't do winter training, or you row 12 weeks a year? Are you new to the sport? Are you old? So I think that helps us kind of see past just the final score, right? That's kind of the first step. The next step is like obviously getting to know the kid, right? And I've talked to sports psychiatrists about this and other coaches. Like, I would love, and I think we're not far off from having some questionnaire that we could send out that would tell us, how tough is this kid, right? Like, how much does he love this thing? But you try to just gauge it and get to talk to them. And I think one thing I try to do is really talk to these kids to just get to know them, and like, what's your motivation for rowing? And like, do you go out of your way to spend your summers rowing? What's your winter break look like? If you're going do you say, I don't want to go on a family vacation because I want to hammer my erg in my basement? Do you say, we're going on a family vacation, where's the closest gym? Are you waking up early on Thanksgiving Day and getting in your workout? Like, what's your Christmas look like? Like, these are the things, like, highly motivated, determined, stubborn, hard-headed athletes. They all think the same way, right? Like, we have guys on our team, like, I'm thinking of my captain, Ryan Trump, a fantastic talent, a great kid, a great leader, great rower, kind of a mainstay of our varsity 8 since day one his freshman year. Has raced at the World Championships in the lightweight double under 23s. This kid is leading a trip for all the freshmen where they're going out and they go to a cabin. The kid's like, hey, where can I get an erg to shove in the back of my car so I can get in a workout? And I see him. He puts an erg up in the middle of the woods and he's doing 75 minutes. I mean, that's crazy behavior, but like, that's the good kind of crazy. And so, like, that's the kind of mentality and the kind of kid that I like to work with, that I want my team full of. These like crazies, right? These kids who just like, they know what it takes and they're willing to do everything they can to get their training in and to get better every single day. A good friend of mine, Anderson Burrell, he used to say this all the time. Every day is day one. You wake up every day, it's day one again. What'd you do today? What'd you do today in your training? What'd you do today to promote your training when you weren't there? What'd you put in your body? What did you not put in your body? All these kinds of things. Like, did you take care of your schoolwork early so that you had time to practice, right? Did you get sleep, or did you stay up all night doing your homework so you didn't get sleep, so you're going to have a bad practice day or you're going to get sick? And was there time for you to take care of your homework in the middle of the day? Like, these are the attributes of elite athletes that we need, because at our level, it's elite. I mean, I think the winner of the IRA, I'll talk about the heavyweights for now, the winner of the IRA would win the under 23 world championship every year. I said it this year. The 8th fastest boat in the world this year was the University of Washington varsity 8. The top 7 were at the Olympics. Boat number 8 was Washington. That's the standard we're talking about here. I mean, it's a high standard, and to really be successful at this level, you got to be an elite athlete. You got to treat yourself like an elite athlete when you practice. More importantly, you got to treat yourself like an elite athlete when you're not in practice. And I get it. 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids with underdeveloped prefrontal cortexes. I don't expect them to be perfect, right? They're kids. I want them to enjoy college. I want them to enjoy all the experience at Dartmouth. But we're here, and I won't shy away from it. We're here to win a national championship, and we're going to do everything we can to get there. And we'll do everything, and we could fall short. But if we don't do everything, we can't even talk about it. So I think, and I know I'm talking a little bit about my team, but those are the that's the mentality we're looking for in kids who want to come and be a part of our team, because it's a big deal, right? We're a family, we're a tight knit family. And like, I'm bringing a new member into our family, and, I want to make sure they have the same like beliefs and thoughts and feelings and energy and focus and understanding and drive that the other guys in our group have. And so it's really hard to suss out. And I've made a lot of mistakes, right? And I've left great kids on the table, and I've taken kids that, maybe I should have taken others. But, that's kind of what we're looking for. And I think what I would say to high school kids is, if that's you, let it be known.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the things that I really want to ask, like, I want to kind of I want to ask you one more question in regards to like the recruiting process and what you guys are looking for, in terms of the actual athletes, right, and so on and so forth, and also just sifting through that process. And then I want to get a little bit more into like, what is life like as a Division I lightweight rower who aspires to compete at the highest level. But before we get to that, I alluded to it in the beginning, but in what I do, right, talking to athletes on, a consistent basis who are aspiring to row at the college level, whatever level that may be, the initial conversation, if they are someone like myself, like you, who is not that prototype or the classic IRA grand final, recruit that can row at a wide, right? You're not 6'6", 210 pounds going, 6'10" to 550, right? Like, as a high school kid, right? And in that initial conversation I have with these athletes, every single one of them has, if they're between 150 and 170 and they're somewhere under 7 on the erg, right? They're going to have the Ivy League lightweight programs on their list of schools, right? Sure. And part of my job is talking a little bit about, okay, I understand it, because there is that thought that if all we're looking at is what is present, in the forums or on the networks of, hey, I have to be above 6'2" and going sub 630 on the erg to row at the Division I level or to row in college, I have to embark down this path of pursuing lightweight rowing, even though I may not be physically in that caliber or academically. How do you, as a coach, or any lightweight coach, but speaking more to you specifically, like, who shouldn't be, and shouldn't's the wrong word, who does lightweight rowing at the Division I level maybe not isn't the right fit, and then what is a viable alternative for those athletes who maybe don't fit, the intangibles that you're looking for, the physical characteristics, or the academics, right? And that's a broad question, but take that.
Yeah, I think the big thing's weight, right? Like, I think most of the kids we're dealing with, the high school kids, we're looking for kids who are really skinny, right? Because and I use myself as the benchmark. Like, if they're taller than me, and I'm like 6 feet tall on a good day, right? And if you're taller than me, you better be really, really skinny, right? And if you're shorter than me, you can be a little more filled out. But when you're 17, if you're 17 and you're 168 pounds, when you're 21, you're not going to be 168 pounds. Or the way you're going to get there is not going to be the way we want you to get there. You know what I'm saying? Like, some guys just aren't meant for it. Like, you need to, and we can look at kids, we can look at their parents, right? To try to gauge, like, are their mom and dad, are they just like a really tall, skinny family? And the kid's probably going to be really skinny. But kids grow. I mean, I grew height-wise in college, and I put on 15, 20 pounds in college. I mean, we're training, we're lifting weights. Guys are eating at a dining hall. right? We're doing a ton of rowing. Like guys get bigger and stronger. And so I do think sometimes I see emails from kids or I talk to kids and they're great. And these kids are usually pretty good on the erg, right? But you're 168 pounds and you're a big, strong looking kid. You're not going to be a lightweight in 2 years. You're definitely not in 4. And so I think for those kids, lightweight's not good for them. Some of those kids, heavyweight's not good for them either because they're short and they're small. We call those tweeners. And so those kids, what I would say, NESCAC. Go to the NESCAC. If people don't know the NESCAC by now, I think that they're just missing out on like the baby Ivy. I mean, the NESCAC, the New England Small College Athletic Conference, is a group of schools. I went to one of them, a group of schools where, highly selective academic institutions, right? Liberal arts colleges, you're going to get a great education. All right. More importantly, the network. I think one of why the Ivy League's so great, like all these schools, they're colleges. Like you can go to any college and you can get a great education. Doesn't matter if it's a CUNY, if it's a SUNY, if it's Stanford, if it's Harvard, if it's Dartmouth, whatever. You can get a great education. What I think is so powerful about the Ivy League is our alumni networking. I think that there are so many kids, so many former Dartmouth athletes, particularly that, want to help current Dartmouth athletes succeed after college and can help them, guide them in their careers, maybe even help them prepare for jobs, get jobs, whatever it might be. That's one of the real powers of these schools. The NESCAC does that as well. I mean, Williams, Trinity, Wesleyan, that's my school, Wesleyan, those schools, have the same kind of networks and these like college, it's basically a baby Ivy. And I just think that like with the D3 IRA, right, where those teams are competing alongside Division One, with the coaches that are in place there, with their ability to recruit, these are varsity teams that are fully funded, that have great facilities, great coaches, great team cultures. Those are just perfect landing spots for tweeners, kids that aren't the 6'6", 608s that you're talking about and aren't going to make lightweight, right? But love rowing and want to go to college and row in college and want to go to a good school. That's where I would steer them. I'd go even further and say, there are great lightweight athletes, really good ones, left on the table every year. And whether that's because there just weren't enough spots for them, because there's just a finite number of spots for lightweights in the Ivy League, and I'll include Georgetown and Navy in that, like in the lightweight sprints league, there's finite spots. There's going to be great kids that we would love to take. There are so many kids I would love to have at Dartmouth. We just can't any year. So where do those kids go? The NESCAC is a great chance, and I'll use Wesleyan as an example just because I went there and I know them. They won the national championship this year. That boat had 4 or 5 real heavyweight recruits from high school and then 3 or 4 lightweight recruits. I know them. I was recruiting them. It didn't work out. They ended up at Wesleyan. I talked to those guys. They're having a great experience. They won a freaking national championship. Maybe some of them are a little bigger now. They put on a little weight. Some of them could still row lightweight now. If they want to row lightweight, they can try to do it in the summer, maybe even at the international level, right? I think Trinity, Wesleyan, Williams, these guys have consistently put lightweights on the national team, right? So I think it's a great opportunity for athletes, and they really should, like if I'm talking to a kid and he's just listing Ivy Leagues as where he wants to go, I always encourage them to also look at NESCACs, because it's this pocket that I think some people still don't know a lot about, but it gives you everything you're looking for in a rowing experience. And I was one of those kids. All right. I wanted to go to Columbia, Penn, Dartmouth, right? I was 648, maybe 646 on the erg. Um, Pretty good grades, went to a good high school, didn't quite have the SAT I needed, right? Didn't get recruited at one of these schools. The head coach at Penn, Mike Irwin, or so, at the time, called me, let me know I wasn't going to go to Penn, said, hey, have you looked at, you know, NESCACs, Trinity, Wesleyan? Put me in contact with Phil Carney. Changed my life. Wouldn't be here without it. You know, I mean, that's like something that I had a great rowing experience. I rode lightweights in the summers. You know, I was in my varsity eight all 4 years. You know, I love my coach. My teammates are my best friends to this day. Got a great education, had a great rowing experience. I know the Dartmouth rowing experience. I know the Wesleyan rowing experience, Tufts, Trinity, Williams, all these schools. We're all doing the same thing. That's the beauty of rowing, you know? And so I really would encourage kids that you're talking to like that or are listening to this, like those are viable options. And I'm telling you, as the D3 IRA has kind of come up the last few years, that world is booming.
Yeah. No, and I'm really happy that you said that. Obviously, you have experience with Wesleyan and just in that conference in that league, and I think one of the things that, like, we did a whole podcast on Nate Clark from Trinity on, and we dove specifically into D3 NESCAC programs. And I think it's one of the things that is so often just skipped over because they look at the label of D3 and so on and so forth, which in reality, as we just talked about, it's like really wasn't even a thing, until a couple of years ago. Like they were all competing in the same, against each other all the way up until I think like 2021 when they made that specific national championship. And when you look at the head of the Charles results, I didn't look at 2024 yet, but 2023, but even 2024, actually, I know the D3 programs that are, right, the NESCAC programs that are sprinkled into that top 10 of the college eight, beating schools like myself, St. Joe's and Drexel and all these other programs, like those are such competitive opportunities that also have very competitive academics, which I think is the big one, right? So that rowing is tough to find that kind of, where you have the best of both, like the Ivy Leagues, right? The best of both, which is unique for a sport, right? Like rowing is the best, some of the best for Ivy League rowing and also academically, right? Or best for rowing and then also academically, right? So it's like, those are great options, I think, for athletes. So with that, like one of the things I think would be curious for the athletes that are interested in lightweight rowing or just, actually we'll keep it to lightweight rowing, right? You're here and you can speak to it better than anyone. It's like, what does that experience, right? And we have a few more questions for as we kind of, wrap it up, but like, talk to me a little bit about the experience of being a lightweight athlete who is rowing at the highest level of the sport. Like, what does college look like? What does training look like? Maybe even just talk about the actual day-to-day of a program like yourself. Like, what can these kids expect and what questions can I ask themselves? Are they, if this, to determine, is this something that they want to pursue?
Yeah, great. I mean, and I've said this a lot, but as lightweight rowing has been taken out of the Olympics and how it's slowly being eliminated from the World Championships, the lightweight sprints league, the lightweight, IRA league is the pinnacle of lightweight rowing on the planet. All the highest level of lightweight rowing is, now that it's not at the Olympics, is happening in U.S. colleges, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And, I think that, you got to train with that level in mind, and so, I can't speak to our peers, but I know since we were about a second away from each other over 3 miles, that we're probably all doing the same kind of stuff. But I think, the day-to-day is, everyone's different. And now I'll dive a little bit into Dartmouth. I think that one of the number one ways to improve athletic performance is to sleep. Sleeping is literally when your body produces human growth hormone, which is, what Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa and Alex Rodriguez shoved in their legs, did all those home runs back in the day. It's literally steroids. And being able to sleep 8, 9, 10 hours is going to make you a better athlete. And I think if you talk to any real elite professional athlete, where there's money involved, where that's cycling, the NBA, the MLB, NHL, NFL, whatever, you realize how serious those guys are about their sleep. And so the issue with college is it's hard to get sleep, right? So one of the things I try to do is I try to limit our morning practices because I want guys to get as much sleep as possible. So we will row 5 afternoons a week, either 3:40 or 4:40, depending on the class schedule. We'll row Saturday mornings, but I try to start as late as possible, like 9 or 10 a.m., so guys can get sleep. And then we do have to row a few times in the morning just to get the mileage we require. And so we'll do kind of a 7:30 start, try to squeeze it in before 10:10 classes. So, and I realize not everyone can do that, but talking about advantages, right? Every institution has their advantage. To me, being able to limit morning practice and get these guys to sleep, or I should say, give them the opportunity to sleep if they want to, is really important. And I have one of these Garmin watches. I used to wear one of these Oura rings, like tracking sleep. I mean, you can just see, I play this game all the time and I'm always talking to my guys. Most of them have these. How much sleep do you get? The quality of the sleep. How do you feel on a day when you got a lot of sleep? Right? Your resting heart rate. That's a great metric to track. Because if your resting heart rate's 40 all the time, and then it bumps up to 50 one day, you might be getting sick. Let's keep an eye on it. Maybe you're training too hard. So I think sleep, and I talk about sleep because I really do see sleep and recovery as equally important to the training. In terms of training, we run a mileage-based training program, so we're very concerned about monitoring our intensity and doing most of our training really long and low. So in that kind of like 80 to 100-minute range at, low stroke rates and low intensities. And the single's great for that because we can monitor our intensity and we can kind of put them out and people can work on their own things. Twice a week, we'll race. And, we'll race always on Saturdays and we'll race on Wednesdays. We'll race in small boats. We'll race in big boats. We'll race on the erg. I think a huge part of performance is performing on the day. Like I said earlier, we know when the sprint is. It's May 18th. We got to perform then. Maybe you wake up May 18th and feel great. Maybe you wake up May 18th and feel horrible. Maybe you're sick. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe your girlfriend just dumped you. Maybe you're top of the world rearing to go. Either way, the race isn't waiting for anyone. It's happening. So you have to be ready to perform. And the mental side of performance is something that can be trained. And, getting used to performing when you're not at your best is really important. So we'll erg test Saturday mornings and then we'll go out. Every Saturday morning we'll erg test. It'll be a different distance, but it's always an erg test. And then we'll go out and we'll race on the water. And the reason it's Saturday is twofold. One, I want to see them racing on the water after racing on the erg, right? So they're tired and they're making it go. And I want to erg on Saturdays. And we used to erg at the beginning of the week, but I want to erg at the end of the week because I want to see not how they perform on the erg when they're fresh as a daisy, ready to go. I want to see how they're doing when they're in the hole. Maybe we've trained 800 minutes that week. You got a 2K at rate 24. How are you going to do? And what we do is we'll erg test on a 3-week cycle. We have a 3-week kind of mesocycle. So we'll do an erg test. So the first week we'll do 2K at 24. The second week we'll do a 30 rate 20. The third week we just do like a 1K open rate. And then week 4 we'll repeat. 2K at 24. Week 5, 30 rate 20. Week 6, 1K at 24. Repeat. Week 7, week 7, 8, 9. So you have 3 opportunities to improve. And I don't care about the first round of testing, but I really care about the second. I'm looking for 100% improvement. And the dirty secret that my team kind of knows, but I don't really tell them, is that the erg test, they think it's on them. They're all nervous, right? Oh, I got this erg test today. I got to do well. But I'm the nervous one, because what the erg test does is it tells me how the training's going. Is the training working? If we have 100% improvement, I did a great job. High fives to me. I'm getting donuts for myself after practice. If we have no improvement, something's up. I did something wrong. 60, 70%, I have to dive into the data. Okay, who performed, who didn't. But constantly, I love the erg. I listen to your stuff online. I love that, you're always talking about staying in touch with the erg. To me, the erg is great. Obviously, it's a great training tool, but it's a tracking tool. Like, you can erg test and you can benchmark and you can see, okay, is my training working? Am I getting better? And then if you're not, take a real look at it. And that's my job with my team, taking a look at it and say, okay, we're not getting better. What do we need to do differently? Or, okay, we are getting better. Let's keep it going. Or, we're not getting better at the rate I wish we were. Let's check. And then I can talk to individual athletes. How are we doing? Are you taking care of yourself outside of practice? Right? Are you getting a lot of sleep? Are you eating well? Right? Are you staying hydrated? What's going on with the stressors in your life? How's classes? How's family? All these things that play this huge role in your training that you don't think about. And we'll see how that is. And then if that's going well and they're still not performing well, that's on me. And that's my job. And I take it seriously. Like, when I look at the time and the effort, my guys, and the commitment and the sacrifices they make for me and my team, I have to do right by them. I have to make sure that every minute we're spending is designed to get them to achieve their goals. So, I use that kind of weekly erg test, the water test, to make sure that we as a coaching staff are doing our due diligence and making sure we're putting them in a position to perform. And we just do that every week, and we try to string them together. And in the fall, the training's more small boat focused. In the winter, it's more erg focused. And in the spring, it's more eights focused. But it always has this kind of holistic development approach, trying to use the data at our disposal to make sure we're continuing to improve.
Yeah, no, and that's a great, and I want to be conscious of your time, but I have to dig in, or I have to ask one follow-up question to something that you said, in regards to, like, obviously, you articulated too, but a lot of what my messaging is, like, it's about the erg and stuff like that, and learning how to appreciate the erg and have confidence in yourself to actually, have a good relationship with it, which oftentimes is narrated throughout the high school communities as not something that people should enjoy doing. I disagree, right? I think it is a piece that athletes can appreciate and have success with. And just out of curiosity, and you can go in as deep as you want or as surface level, but just give a quick summary on, like, why those tests. You said, is there a story behind those tests?
Yeah.
2K at 24, 30 minute 20.
Yeah, 1K. Yeah, sure.
This is education, education for me.
Happy to. So, and I've done 3-week and 4-week cycles, but basically I want to give them tests that they can, with enough space between the tests, that they can improve, right? So the training works, right? I do a unique test that's not an open rate 2K or open rate 6K, which we will do, but I do that so that the stress is kind of off. It doesn't mean as much, it's not like the 2K, the 6K, like, how, I'm not curious about that. This test is for me. It's for us. This is our team metric. I don't care you comparing to your high school buddy who rows at program X. Like, you can do that. That's your ego. We're talking about us. 2K24, 30 rate 20, that's power. I care about power. You know, short power over 2K, long power over 30 minutes. For lightweights, rate caps are not something they're good at, right? They're not good low and long. So I want to do that. I don't care if you can row 34 for 6K and spin it along. I want to see what you have to do at 20. You got to learn to develop your power per stroke. That's really important for me, and I want to test it. The 2K at 24, I do because I know what they do at 2K24. I can usually extrapolate what they're going to do for open rate 2K. So it kind of is a 2K test. They just don't know it. It also gets them used to the distance, which is really important. The 30 rate 20, love that test. Stole it from Jürgen Grobler from GB. They do it. It's really hard. You got to find ways. It's a mentally challenging test. You got to find ways to stay on it and sprint without having rate at your disposal. That's really cool. And then the 1K Open is actually a new test this year. But one of our issues the past year was our power. You know, I felt like we weren't good at that, just like absolute speed and power. And so we've been doing a lot of weight training to help us do that. We've been doing some of these kind of RP3, and we have a Power Friday workout where we'll go out and we'll do stroke pyramids and we'll do some stuff on the RP3 to develop our power and joules. But the 1K one just shows me a real, okay, no rate cap, no governor, 1,000 meters, 3 minutes. What do you got? Just go. No preparation. We're not rowing 35 anywhere this time of year. Let's see it. What do you have? And I want them getting used to that burn too, right? That like shock. I mean, we did this 1K, our opening 1K. It was unbelievable. Guys go out 120s, blow up. There's just one kid. I'm like standing behind him. A good kid, varsity kid, love the kid. I'm standing behind him. I'm watching him like he flied and died like I've never seen before. This kid's been rowing 7 years. I was just like, I was gonna, you know, I was kind of yelling at him. I started to laugh. The split was going so high. I was like, dude, and he comes off. He's like, I've never seen that before. But you know, we got to get used to that that opening 1,000. And so that's kind of the piece. You know, want to test them over different distances, different stroke rates. And then what I'll do at the end of the fall is I have all this data on them, and I can see, okay, this kid's really good over 1K. He sucks over 30 minutes. Let me guide him when he goes home for training for 6 weeks or 4 weeks without us. Let me help to design a personalized training program that's going to cater to his weaknesses. This kid, great 30-minute, terrible 1K. He has a different weakness, right? And so really try to the best of my ability, like I talked about this holistic development approach, try to individualize training when I can, and getting a kind of gamut of testing allows me to see guys' weaknesses, and instead of shying away from them, make him train them.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And those are things like I love just learning about, diving into, and the 2K at rate 20s or rate 24 is definitely one that I'm definitely interested in, because I think especially for high school athletes, like who that weight that they put on themselves with the 2K, like it's very easy to be like, hey, like, you know, do a 2K, but govern yourself with, you know, you can't be above 24, right? Like go, right? Like, and yeah.
And what I'll say too is when you have guys who do this, and you know, let's say they weren't that good in high school. Like I have this kid, like Gray Graham. I talked about his 30 rate 20. We got 2K at 24. I'm like, your goal is to go your 2K PR on your 2K 24. And you do that, your mental confidence, your boost, your aura is just like rising. You're like, man, I'm going. It's like with 6K and 2K. When guys get to the point where they're holding their old 2K split for 6K, that's like, whoa. Like, does anything make you feel better than that? I mean, it's the best. And so I think that's the other secret. Like, and we'll have some guys who will just crush this test. I mean, these kids, you know, who they can look back and they go, man, it wasn't that long ago that I was doing that for 2K, and now I'm doing that at 2K 24. But more importantly, if you have a kid who can go 626, 628 for 2K at 24, that kid's not going to be so scared about going 620 at open.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that, and I appreciate you you diving into that and giving some context because those are I'm a apply some of those to the training I would do with some kids. So with that, Trevor, like so a couple or last couple closing thoughts, and I'll let you get wrapped up with, or as you continue to move through the fall and prepare for the last race and things like that. But just give me or give the audience more so like, and you've covered a lot. Like there's so much tangible, real advice buried into the, or just in this last hour. Like there's so much good stuff in there. And I just want you to kind of like close things out with just, obviously you have a lot of years of coaching experience. You obviously have coaching experience at the highest levels of lightweight rowing. Obviously you have coaching experience with the NESCACs. You have your own rowing experience at Wesleyan, and you have constant conversations with athletes who are aspiring to row in college and be in those shoes someday, regardless of what level. And my last question for you is, what advice would you have for athletes as a junior, sophomore, maybe a freshman, or even a senior, right? Depending on where they are in the process. Just take it wherever you want. But what advice would you have for those athletes to be better positioned for success at the college level?
Yeah, I think, step one is, rowing can open a lot of doors for you. Like there's no question for that. But, make sure you're rowing for the right reasons, right? And that you're rowing for you. And at the end of the day, and I talk about this with guys on my team, like, forget about, all the pressure of this or that test or this race or all that. But like, just think about when you were just first starting to row and why you love the sport, right? Maybe it was being outside, or just like, maybe it was getting really fit, or just like rowing hard with your buddies, right? And like, whatever that is that you love about it, don't ever lose that, and keep that at the forefront of everything you do. I think make sure you're listening to your coaches, and doing your training and your practices to the fullest extent you can. Make sure you're taking care of yourself outside of practice. I talked about the importance of sleep, but also there is just a wealth of knowledge on the internet. YouTube, I open my Instagram now, and obviously this like AI, like algorithm, like all it shows to me is rowing stuff. There's a lot of great stuff on there. Like I think if I'm an aspiring high school rower and I want to get better, there's a lot of opportunities to learn stuff and know how I can supplement my training, outside of practice. And, rowing is generally, as I've seen it and know it to be true, the work you put in is what you get out. Not a lot of things you can say that about. But this is something you seriously want to be good at. Like, find the time, develop a plan. I think your high school coach can be helpful. I think some resources on the internet can be helpful. You're one of them, Kevin. Find a way, put it all in. You only have so many years that you can do this stuff when you're young. And there's a lot worse ways to spend your life than messing around with boats. And so, give it your all and put your best foot forward in terms of your training and your own development. In terms of college recruiting and the process, like reach out and don't be discouraged. Like some coach doesn't respond to your email them again. Like coaches are busy. I'm one of them. Generally, the type of people, and this isn't true, there are some coaches who are great and really organized. I'll talk to myself. We're rowing guys or girls, right? Like I'm not an email guy. I don't sit at a desk all day. Right, I'm out on the river. Like any opportunity I have to be working on boats or coaching or working with athletes where I'm drawn to, like you don't get a response from your coach, the head coach, the assistant coach, email one of them, email both of them, email them again. Like if you want to be somewhere, let them know. Coaches want athletes who want to be there. You're not going to be annoying or pesky. That doesn't exist. It's not true. Like we want to see athletes who want to be at our institutions. So be on them, let them know. And then keep your door, like, don't be like Dartmouth, or like Harvard. Like there's so many great opportunities to row in college. If it's something you want to do, there is a place for you. There's no D1, D2, D3 club. Like all these places can give you what you want to get out of it. You just have to be open and willing to try. And so I think I would tell any aspiring college rower to make sure they reach out, visit campuses if you can. Meet with coaches, meet with teammates, talk to the alums at these from your high school teams that are rowing in college. Like, get people talking about it. Find a sense of what a school or a team is really like. Find one that you think you can fit in, and go all in.
That's a great way to close things out. Like again, like you're that this or just the amount of different little nuggets in there that I think athletes can walk away with. And the one that you mentioned, especially, stay on it with the email. Stay, if you're interested in a team, like again, like I think that's something that to hear from you, or to hear from any, coach at a really good university, like again, like they may give you the news that you do or don't want to hear when they do respond to you, right? Like, hey, you're not really where we are today, or so on and so forth, but you won't learn that if you don't stay on top of the communication, right? And if they're not responding to it, it's like, it's not because they don't want to, it's just because it's the timing, right? So it's like, just follow up, right? So I think the little nuggets in there, right? And keeping the doors open and not, or expanding your knowledge, like, again, everyone should play that back because there's some good stuff in there. Trevor, last thing. So what can we do to help you? Is there any way that athletes can find you or your staff, or get a little bit more about Dartmouth?
Yeah, sure.
What can we do? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think obviously myself, Noel, Warner, we're available like online. You can find our emails. I think we live, like, if there's, I talked about, and I'm going to say this, and maybe this is a blanket statement for my whole league, or maybe just college in general, but there are kids who are recruited to row at these schools. A lot of guys in our team were not recruited. They rowed in high school. They loved Dartmouth. They applied. They got in because they were great students, and they're on our team. And those guys sit in our 1V. They sit in our 2V. They sit in our 3V. Right. And like, there's no stigma. Oh, I was recruited. Oh, he wasn't. They're all on our team. And so I think, like, if you want to come to Dartmouth, right, and and we can't recruit you, or you're not good enough to be recruited, but you're a great student, apply. We'd love to have you. And I think a lot of schools feel that way, and everyone wants to get that edge and that help in getting into college. But, having rowing on your resume in the application process, it shows you're a hard worker. It shows you can be part of a team. You can work with your teammates. It shows you that you're diligent and focused. Generally, it means you have good time management skills. These things are helpful to get into college, whether you're going to row or not, and whether you're recruited or not. So I would say, at Dartmouth, at all these schools, like, make your choices, apply, put your names in there. You can be a great member of a varsity rowing team as someone who wasn't recruited and walks on. And I can look at across the bays at our heavyweights and women, and across the league of athletes who walked onto these teams and are some of the best guys in the league.
I love that. That's an amazing last little piece there, because again, I think that is something that so many athletes aren't aware of. The fact that you can do that, right? If you have the grades, if you have the everything else that comes with getting admitted or being accepted to the university. So, Trevor, this was a blast. I think you opened up a lot of things in that last 5 minutes or so that could totally make a part 2 at some point down the line. So I'll definitely be reaching out on that front. But again, really appreciate you making the time. Good luck with the rest of the fall. Good luck up in Hanover as you guys prepare for winter training and all the things to come. And obviously we'll be staying in tune as the lightweight season heats up here, especially in the spring, as it continues to stay competitive, and schools like Dartmouth competing at a high level. So again, thank you so much for coming on, and good luck as you finish off the fall.
No, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.